This is a recipe for Devonshire splits, a light and fluffy bun alternative to scones for afternoon tea. These little beauties are going to be finished off crammed with cream and jam. So to start off with, we need to heat our milk to about blood temperature. We don't want to boil the milk. If we add too much heat, it's just going to kill the yeast and we're not going to get that beautiful light and fluffy texture. So whilst that's coming up to temperature, we can just sieve our strong white bread flour. So we want to try and get as much lightness into our buns as possible. So hence why I'm sieving it from a nice height. And of course we don't want any lumps in there. We now need to add 3 very special ingredients into this bun dough. We've got dried yeast that I'm going to put on that side of the bowl. We've got some salt, and that I'm going to put on this side of the bowl. And the reason for that is if we add the salt and the yeast together, the salt is just going to kill the yeast, so we don't want to do that either. And then finally some sugar, which in the dough is going to feed the yeast and give it a really lovely light explosion. Let's just check on our milk. So once our milk has slightly warmed through, we can just add it into our flour, salt, sugar and yeast. I'm also going to add some melted butter. Just going to add a nice little touch of richness in there. And then just using a little rounded knife, I'm just going to mix that together from the center outwards, slowly bringing in a little bit more. And then what we can do is once it starts to form a dough, is just get our hands in there to get all those bits added into it. And now comes the stage that we would call kneading. We're going to spend about 5 minutes with the dough hook, just kneading that dough. If you haven't got one of these, you can knead it on the table, of course, with some flour for about 10 minutes. We're going to leave this one for about 5 minutes. So whilst that's kneading and becoming light, elastic and fluffy, if you've got loads of leftover dough on your hands, don't go and put your hand under the tap because it will just get even more soggy. If you just add a little bit of flour to your hand and rub your hands against each other, it will come straight off your hands, not clog up the sink. It's a lot easier to go and clean them. So now that our dough has finished kneading, I've got a greased bowl and some cling film that I'm going to prove the dough in. We'll just switch that off. So what we're looking for is a smooth and elastic dough. I'm just moulding that into a ball and I'm going to pop that into the bottom of the greased bowl. I'm going to cover that with cling film. I'm going to pop that into a warm place, like an airing cupboard or somewhere warm, for about an hour until the dough's doubled in size, and that'll be proved ready to knock back for baking. So our dough has proved for an hour. You can see that it's doubled in size, and you can also see lovely pockets of air. If you baked it like this, it would bake really unevenly and you wouldn't get that lovely light and fluffy texture that we're looking for. So simply, we just want to crush all that air out just by punching the dough, and you can see that it starts to fall back. Taking a little bit of flour on our board, we can tip that out. I'm just going to knock that back ever so slightly so it's easier to mould. So we want to make about 12, so we're just going to cut through our dough. So now we've got our 2 bits of dough. We want to get 6 out of this. Once we've got to this stage, we can then start to mould our buns. And very simply, I just press it in on itself. That's going to form the underneath of our bun, like so. And we just pinch that on the bottom, turn it up on its side, and then just using your palm of your hand, just carefully press the board and the dough together in a little circle. And then you get the perfect little bun. Getting our tray, you can just pop them on there, and then you just continue just as you did. Now we've got our 12 buns, but before we bake them, I just want to prove them one last time, and I'm going to pop them back into my warm place for about 20 minutes, and they'll kind of come up a little bit more and give us that lovely light texture that we want. So these are off to prove for about 20 minutes. Our buns have proved for the second time. I'm going to just loosely take off our cling film. You can see how they've doubled in size again. We've got a lovely crust starting to happen, and we're going to pop them into our preheated oven, 200 degrees. So after 10 minutes, once baked, we've got that lovely golden crust on the top. Just so they cool down a little bit quicker, just being really careful, we're just going to place them onto our cooling rack so that they cool down. Now comes the fun part of filling them, of course. Now traditionally, these are cut at a diagonal angle. You could, of course, cut them in half and fill them like that, but we're going to go for a bit of tradition today. So just taking our serrated knife, just make that cut like that. See there how we've got that beautiful light and fluffy texture? It's exactly what we're looking for. Then we've got some jam we can just spoon in there, and then we've got some whipped cream. Now of course, if you wanted to be a bit more indulgent, you could use clotted cream. And as a little final flurry, a little bit of icing sugar. Nice and simple, Devonshire splits.